Hey there, folks, and welcome out to the Single Player Podcast. I'm your one and only host, I'm 16-Bit, and I got a good show for you this week because we're going to be talking about EVO 2022, a new study on video games, and Splatoon 3, plus more. So sit back, relax, enjoy the show, and I'll be with you in a bit. Alright folks, we're back, and now it's time to start the show with my favorite segment, your favorite segment, everyone in the world's favorite segment. It's time for the Gaming Forecast. So let's see what's coming out between the week of August 21st to 27th. Okay, on the 23rd, you have 6 games coming out. Are You Smarter Than a 5th Grader for Windows, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, 5, Xbox One, and Series X. Fallen Legion Revenants and Rise to Glory both making their debut in North America on Windows, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, and Series X. Midnight Fight Express for Windows, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One. Saints Row for Windows, PlayStation 4, 5, Xbox One, and Series X. And Yars Recharged for Windows, Mac, Linux, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, 5, Xbox One, Series X, Stadia, and Atari VCS. Then on the 24th, you have Islets for Windows, Nintendo Switch, Xbox One, and Series X. Then on the 25th, you have a whopping 9 games all coming out on one day. Alice's Warped Wonderland Recollection for Nintendo Switch. Earth Defense Force 6 exclusively in Japan for the PlayStation 4 and 5. Hawk for Windows and Nintendo Switch. I Was a Teenage Exocolonist for Windows, Mac, Linux, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, and 5. Idle Manager for Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, and 5. Monster Outbreak for Windows, Mac, Linux, and Nintendo Switch. SD Gundam Battle Alliance for Windows, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, 5, Xbox One, and Series X. Soul Hackers 2 releasing exclusively in Japan for Windows, PlayStation 4, 5, Xbox One, and Series X. And The Bridge Curse Road to Salvation for Windows. Then on the 26th, you have 6 games coming out. Brock the Investigator for Windows. Fallen Legion Revenants and Glory making their European release on Windows, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, and Series X. Nexomon plus Exomon Extinction Complete Collection for Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One. Pac-Man World Repack for Windows, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, 5, Xbox One, and Series X. And Soul Hackers 2 making its Western debut on Windows, PlayStation 4, 5, Xbox One, and Series X. And that was your gaming forecast. Some interesting stuff there. What I thought was interesting is Yars Recharge is actually the first time I've ever mentioned the Stadia or the Atari VCS on this segment. So thought that was very interesting. But if there's one game I'm actually quite interested in, it's Pac-Man World Repack. I played the hell out of the PS1 game when I was a kid, so I'm definitely looking forward to that remake. But anyway, with that being said, let's move on to our first topic. Okay, and for our first story, we got to talk about EVO 2022. That's right, it came and went a couple of weeks ago. And even though it's a tournament, and I wasn't really paying attention to that, what I was paying attention to was the fighting game news that came out of it. And there was quite a lot. And so I'm going to try to get through this as fast as I possibly can. First and foremost, we have an update on Persona 4 Arena Ultimax as Arc System Works announced that the game will be getting rollback netcode for PC and PlayStation 4 now. So if you got the game, you can go and download it right now. I'm going to be quite frank. I've never understood the difference between, was it delayed based and rollback? I don't get it, okay? I've tried to understand it. You can try and write a comment basically explaining to me, and this, no matter what you do, I will never understand the difference. I just don't get it. But next up, there was an update on Dragon Ball Fighter Z, as it was announced it's going to be coming to Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5, though release dates were not actually given, and it will also be getting rollback netcode. So I know rollback has a lot of fans for it, so I don't know. Anyway, Namco also gave us an update on Tekken 7. They're going to be releasing a new update that brings new balancing and tactics to the game. Also, the trailer ended off something very interesting. It ended with a cutscene from the first Tekken game, and then cut to a new render of Kazuya. And a lot of people seem to think that this might be hinting at a new Tekken game. Whether or not it's Tekken 8 or Tag Tournament 3, I have no idea. But honestly, regardless, I'm looking forward to it. Also, Capcom gave an update on Street Fighter 6, announcing 2 fighters to the roster. Of course, fan favorite Yuri will be making her comeback, as is a new character, Kimberly. So, if you're looking forward to Street Fighter 6, there's something to look forward to. Also, there's a new 2D fighting game called Blazing Strike. It's a game that's being published by Axis and developed by Rare Breed Makes Games. And it's apparently a throwback to old school 2D fighting games. Kind of reminds me of like Street Fighter Alpha, King of Fighters 98, that late 90s era of fighting games. So definitely looking forward to that. That was going to be coming out later this year, but it has been pushed back to spring of 2023. And that's going to be coming across a whole bunch of platforms, Steam, Switch, PlayStation 4, 5, so there's something to look forward to. Also, since I think Evo is now owned by Sony, they decided to put out a survey to people who went to Evo this year. And apparently, this survey asked a question about NFTs. Yeah, whether or not people are interested in them. And look, obviously I wasn't there. Obviously I can't vote. I obviously can't answer this thing. But I am asking anyone who was there who did take the survey, please, for the love of God, tell them no. I am begging of you. Say no. Say no to NFTs. For the love of God and for the love of God and all that is holy on the earth, just tell Sony not to do NFTs, please. Anyway, that being said, there was also news coming out of SNK. Lots of news. First and foremost, Samurai Showdown will be getting rollback netcode in spring of next year. So there's that. Also, King of Fighters 15 will be getting an entire new DLC characters called Team Samurai, all from Samurai Showdown. That includes Nakaruru, Hoamaru, and Darly Dagger. So if you're looking forward to that, there you go. Also, King of Fighters 15 will be getting crossplay sometime in 2023. That's right. So if you got a PlayStation 4, if you've got a PlayStation 4 copy, a friend of you's got a PlayStation 5 or Xbox One or Series X or whatever, you can play it with them. It's no longer tied to the console. Also, speaking of SNK, and this one really got my attention. Oh, yeah. SNK has announced that they are developing a brand new Fatal Fury Garou game. Fuck yes, we haven't had a new one of those in over 20 years. So I am totally looking forward to this one. God damn. That's going to be amazing. Also, Skullgirls Second Encore has announced a new character for their Season 1 pass named Marie. So, yeah, that's going to be cool. Also, we got some updates on Guilty Gear Strive. They gave an entire roadmap in terms of updates and that there's going to be coming out. For example, for summer of this year, they've got a new character, new additional character color, as well as PS5 reduced output delay. Steam reduced the connection time for the initial server connections. And then in the fall, you've got crossplay beta test for Steam, PS4, and 5. Crossplay update, new character. Number 7, winter of 2022, you got battle balance patch. And then in 2023, you have the 8th new character and 2 additional stages. So it's all looking good from there. Which brings us to the other bit of news that came out of EVO. Okay, let's get it out of the way. Let's talk about Bridget. Now, I'm sure many of you have heard the news. It's been all over the place, and people are still debating about it. I was going to talk about it last week, but I decided to hold off and wait until I could kind of understand the whole thing, because there was so much there was so much shit being basically thrown around that it was kind of hard to follow. So I think I have an understanding of what's actually happening. So bear with me here, okay? So at EVO, it was announced that Bridget would be added as a DLC character to Guilty Gear Strive. Now, Bridget's a longtime character, has been around since, I think, Guilty Gear XX all the way back in 2002. That's right, Bridget has been in the series for over 20 years. And with the announcement came a trailer showing Bridget off. Now, people noticed some things, most notably the fact that in the trailer, Bridget appears to say, "I'm a girl." And then on top of that, on the English website, it uses female pronouns. And immediately, people started taking this as a sign that Bridget is now transgender. Bridget's no longer just a dude cross-dressing. Bridget is just simply a trans woman. And they've just been running with it ever since. Now, of course, there were people who objected to this and pointed out some obvious inconsistencies. First and foremost, the fact that the Japanese site doesn't actually say that. The Japanese site outright says Bridget is a boy who was born into a millionaire family. So right there on the bat, it the Japanese site identifies Bridget as a boy. You also have the fact that Japanese fans acknowledge Bridget as a boy. So now you have this massive debate going on the internet where some people are claiming that Bridget is trans, some people are saying no, and it's just been it's been hard to kind of follow because there's so much shit going on. At one point, people were claiming that it was part of a bad ending, that there were technically 2 endings, and in the bad ending, Bridget calls himself a girl. But that's also been debunked, and this is just simply one of the dialogue options. Now, from what I've seen, there is more to the "I'm a girl" quote, because it is in the Japanese, by the way, and that's another thing. People were pointing to that it's also in the Japanese where Bridget says, "I'm a girl." But some people pointed out that if you actually read the entire scene, it comes off like basically Bridget's a little bit more playful about it. Okay? Because it's kind of been the joke throughout the series that people keep getting confused with Bridget's gender. And so it kind of comes off, if you read that the dialogue that comes with that, it comes off like Bridget's just being playful. Like, yeah, I'm a girl, tee-hee, that sort of thing. Okay? So, it does seem to me that there does seem to be a disconnect between the Japanese and the English one. Okay? Where the Japanese version seems to acknowledge that Bridget's a boy, but the English version is saying that Bridget is a girl, transgender. Actually, the word transgender is never actually mentioned. So people kind of like keep inventing these scenes where Bridget's like, "I'm accepting who I am," and that's not really in there. Again, we're just talking about one line that people have been running with for quite a while. Now, what do I think about this? Well, I've been back and forth with the entire thing. I've looked into it as much as I can, and here's the thing. People are going to hate me for this, depending on what you think. I think personally that there's not enough evidence to say that that Bridget is transgender. You can disagree with me on that, and that's perfectly fine, by the way. It kind of annoys me when people are like, you have to agree with me. No. You don't have to agree with me. You can completely disagree with me. That's not how you create dialogue, by the way. It kind of annoys me when people are like, let's create dialogue, and their entire attitude is just shut up and listen to everything I have to say. No, that's not how you create dialogue. Dialogue is basically understanding that we just have a disagreement, and we're going to agree to disagree. You know, that's dialogue. But I just don't see enough evidence to claim that Bridget is transgender. I don't see it. But I could be wrong. Because the thing is, okay, you also understand that there's an entire... that Bridget is part of sort of a subculture within Japan called, and I apologize if I'm butchering this, Otoko no Ko. I think I pronounced that correctly. I don't know. I do not understand Japanese. A lot of what I'm getting from is from people translating stuff on Twitter and also through Google Translate. So bear with me on that regard. Okay. And essentially, it kind of translates to male daughter or male girl, and essentially it's a subculture of cross-dressing. Men who cross-dress as women or have feminine appearances. Okay. Now, the cross-dressing has this cross-dressing subculture has been around for many years. It goes back to the 80s and such, but Bridget belongs to sort of a sort of another wave of this subculture from the early 2000s of characters who don't choose to cross-dress but are forced into it in a certain way. And this is the one thing that I think a lot of people just kind of like ignored, is the backstory of Bridget. Okay, for those who don't know, Bridget was born into a very wealthy family. Okay, and it just so happens that in Bridget's village, they're very superstitious about twin boys because Bridget has a twin brother. Okay, so because of that, because they feel that, I think it's like I'm going based off my memory because it's been quite a while since I played these games, but the village has a suspicion, a superstition about twin boys bringing calamity to the village. So in order to prevent the village from killing Bridget, his parents basically gave him a female name and made him dress as a girl and live as a girl. But in the past series, Bridget has never identified as a girl. Bridget has always identified as a boy. So so basically making Bridget transgender kind of, in my opinion, from what I'm seeing, it kind of retcons that it doesn't fit in line with canon. You know what I'm saying? It just doesn't fit in with the overall story of Guilty Gear. And again, this is another thing that's probably going to piss people off, is that look, do you really want that as look, I understand, okay? Trans people want representation. That's fine. But are you sure you want Bridget? Because it kind of comes across like Bridget was basically groomed into being a girl. Bridget didn't have a choice. He was basically forced into it. So I'm not really sure if you want Bridget as trans representation. I think you would be far better off with an original character. Now, once again, understand that this is just simply my opinion. You don't have to agree with it. And that's, like I said, that's fine. You don't have to agree with it. But I do admit that I could be completely wrong in this. Okay? Because ultimately, the only one who can actually confirm this is Daisuke Ishiwatari, the series creator and also musician. Yes, when you're playing a game and you hear the guitar shredding in the background, that's him. That's the series creator. Dude's an absolute amazing guitarist. Okay. Anyway, he has final say
on this. And really, it's up to him to decide whether or not Bridget is trans or just a cross-dresser. Okay? So, and you know what? I'm not even sure if he's going to be willing to really clear this up. It's possible he could basically just leave this open and say, fuck you all, I'm just not going to explain it. You know, pull a, what was it? David Lynch. I remember seeing years ago where he did an interview and someone's like, can you elaborate that? And he says no. And he just doesn't. Okay? It wouldn't surprise me if Ishiwatari basically did the exact same thing where people are like, is Bridget trans? And he's just like, I'm not elaborating on that. That would be interesting. But, you know, once again, he has final say. And it's up to him to decide whether or not Bridget is trans. And if he decides that Bridget is trans, then okay, fine. Then I'll accept it. But from what I'm seeing, from all the evidence I have seen, it seems to me that a lot of people just simply jumped the gun and immediately made a claim that I don't think is there. It seems to me like they're taking a small line and they're just running with it. Okay? Same thing with the English translation. It seems to me like Arc System Works in America, the English translators, it seems to me like they just took that one line and they're just running with it. So, like I said, that's just my opinion. You don't have to agree with it. And in fact, I would like to hear your opinions on this. Because it does seem to me that like this is very polarizing. Okay? It does seem to me that a lot of people do have, you know, very strong opinions about it. And once again, understand this isn't coming from hatred or anything like that. A lot of people, it seems to me that if you disagree with people on this, they like think that you hate them or something like that. No. That's not what this isn't, fuck. This isn't coming out of hate. It's just simply, I'm going based off of what I'm seeing of all the evidence I've looked at, and I'm just simply coming up with my own opinion. That's all. And once again, you don't have to agree with it, but understand that it is not coming out of hatred. Anyway, I've talked about this long enough. Holy shit, 12 minutes. Fuck me. Anyway, I'm going to take a short break, guys, and we'll be right back after this. All right, folks, we're back, and first up in our next round of stories, we have an interesting study to talk about from the Royal Society Open Science Journal. Oh yeah, we're getting a little bit more academic here, because they recently published a study on video games' impact on well-being. So apparently what they did is they did a study over the course of 6 weeks involving almost 39,000 players playing a wide variety of games, anything from Animal Crossing to Apex Legends to The Crew 2 to Gran Turismo, Outriders, Forza Horizon 4, EVE Online, all that stuff. And what they found from their study is that playing games has very little impact on a person's well-being unless they've played over 10 hours or more than their daily usual. So yeah, if you're playing games for at least under 10 hours, you're actually pretty fine. No, there's not going to be any impact on you. They also found that those who had played for fun rather than for compulsion had a better levels of well-being. So it's a very interesting study. Now, of course, the researchers themselves have said that more information does need to be gathered, and they do need to continue studying. But so far, it's looking like video games actually are better in smaller dosages. And honestly, that's something I've always kind of felt. That really too much of games is not actually good for you. It's okay if you're playing for a few hours, you know. You come home from work, you sit back, relax, you play a couple of games until you have to go to bed and restart the day once again. That's fine. But if you're spending most of your time, like, as they say here, over 10 hours playing games, that's not actually good. And it's honestly something I always feel about just about anything. Too much of anything is not good for you. You know, it's sort of the addendum of life. You know, too much of anything is not good for you at all. Even if it's something that actually is good for you, like health food or exercise, too much of that can actually be kind of unhealthy for you. So, you know what it is? You need to balance everything out. Every aspect of your life needs to be perfectly balanced. I went through this when I was in my 20s, you know, like over 10 years ago. I spent most of my time playing games. Now, however, I've got a job, I've got a whole bunch of other shit to do, so I don't really have time to do that, but I save that for, you know, late evening and such. So I've been able to kind of balance out my game playing with everything else in my life. And you know what? I can tell you there's definitely been a huge improvement over the last several years. So definitely, it's like I said, it's one of the things where you have to look at what you're doing and look at your life in general, and you have to balance everything out and find time for everything. Not at the same time, but, you know, schedule everything and such. So anyway, let's move on to our next story. Okay, and for our next story, we have some news coming out of THQ Nordic, because it appears one of their games has been leaked and because of that has actually been officially confirmed. And of course, I'm talking about the Alone in the Dark reboot. That's right. Well, I think it's like the fourth one they've actually had this time. But what's interesting about it is it's trying to go back to its survival horror roots by being set in the 1920s. And that really caught my attention, because rarely do you ever see survival horror games actually set in that era. So it looks absolutely fantastic. So far, it's just a trailer and there's very little gameplay in it, but from what I'm seeing, it actually looks really good. Now, of course, it obviously plays like a modern survival horror game, though I would have liked if they actually tried to do a static camera. Not like completely static, but something more akin to, like, I don't know, like Resident Evil Code Veronica, where you had that static camera, but it moved slightly around in a 3D space. Anyway, this is, like I said before, this has got to be like the fourth reboot that they've done. Because I remember there was obviously the original trilogy in the mid-90s. Then there was the New Nightmare, which was, I remember hearing actually good things about it. That was on the PlayStation 1. I remember I think it was also on the Dreamcast as well. I could be wrong on that. Then there was the mid-2000s reboot from like 2007 or so. that was, I remember just being downright terrible. And then they tried again a couple of years ago with another reboot, and that one was just god awful. So I'm glad that to see that THQ Nordic is giving Alone in the Dark another chance, and this time I'm hoping they don't fuck it up. I mean, you have the godfather of modern survival horror games. This predates Resident Evil by several years, and you keep fucking up every single attempt to reboot it. Just please, for the love of God and all that's right in humanity, get it right this time. And from what I'm seeing of the trailer, it looks like they are kind of getting it right. So there is no set release date, by the way. My guess is anywhere between late 2023 or 2024. Who knows at this point? So anyway, moving on to our next story. All right, and for our next story, we have some sad news coming out of Capcom, as it's been announced that longtime producer Hiroyuki Kobayashi is officially leaving the company to join NetEase after over 27 years with Capcom. He said, and I quote, "Today, August 12th, is my 50th birthday. As such, I would like to share something very special with everyone. After serving 27 years with gratitude, I have departed from Capcom on March 31st of this year and will be officially joining NetEase Games as a producer. Detailed plans will be shared later, so please stay tuned. I will strive to continuously create more enjoyable entertainment experiences for everyone at this new company in this new era. Thank you for your continued support." So, Godspeed, dude. For those who don't know about Kobayashi, dude has an amazing track record. He joined Capcom back in 1995. He was a programmer on the original Resident Evil and Resident Evil 2. He was a planner on Dino Crisis, the producer of Dino Crisis 2, Devil May Cry, the Resident Evil remake, PNO 3, Resident Evil 4, Killer 7, Devil May Cry 4, Dragon's Dogma, Mega Man 11. The list goes on what this guy worked on. He was also worked on some of the anime adaptations. That's right, he was a supervisor on the Devil May Cry anime, Resident Evil Degeneration and Damnation, and Vendetta, as well as the Dragon's Dogma anime. So yeah, dude has quite a track record. But while it's a shame to see that he's leaving Capcom, let's just hope there's some good that he'll bring some good stuff to NetEase. Anyway, guys, I'm gonna take a short break, and we'll be right back after this.
GameCube. クールにかわしてハードに打て。任天堂ゲームキューブ PN3。
All right, folks, we're back. And first up in our last round of stories, we got to talk about Splatoon 3 because Nintendo just released a Direct dedicated to Splatoon 3, a whole bunch of information, and it's massive. Half an hour long video. But don't worry, this segment's not going to be half an hour long. It's going to be just a few minutes. Anyway, first up, they talked about story mode. It's going to be returning, so which is always nice to hear. Turf War will also return, and it has a lot of improved gameplay. For example, there's a couple of new moves that you can do, such as the Squid Surge, which allows you to swim up walls in a single burst, and the Squid Roll, which makes it possible to jump out of ink while turning around. So, also, there's going to be a whole bunch of new weapons and new clothing options for you to choose from. Too much for me to talk about here, because my god, they keep adding a whole bunch of different types of weapons to this game, and it's like, Jesus Christ. Also, Salmon Run will be returning, so, which is always good to hear. That was a nice addition to Splatoon 2, so I'm glad to see that that'll be making its return. Also, a whole bunch of new stages will be added, as well as a whole bunch of classic stages. So, for example, stuff that is exclusive to Splatland, such as Eeltail Alley, Scorch Gorge, Mincemeat Metalworks, and Undertow Spillway. There will also be classic ones such as Museum di Alfonzino, Hammerhead Bridge, and Mahi Mahi Resort. In total, 12 stages, and with more to come in future updates. We were also introduced to the game's new hosts. Of course, this time, Pearl and Marina do not return, but instead, we don't get a duo, we get a trio called Deep Cut, and they include Fry, Shiver, and Big Man, which now brings me to Splatfest. Yes, it's coming back again, but this time it's a little bit different, because now you have a trio of hosts. They've decided to change things out a bit, because now it's split up into two separate sections. The first half is your traditional turf war battle, where it's 4v4. However, the second half is now where everyone is split up into 3 different teams of 4 versus 2 versus 2. So it's going to make Splatfest very, very interesting. Now, of course, they also announced the first Splatfest when it will begin, and it'll be happening on August 27th from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And the theme this time will be rock, paper, scissors. So you have to choose between whether you want rock, paper, or scissors. So going to be an interesting one. Not sure who I'm going to choose, but you'll definitely be able to play against me on the battlefield. So anyway, it was also revealed that there's going to be new battle modes called Anarchy Battles, where players will compete for rankings in objective-based battles. Of course, there's 4 separate modes on rotation called Splat Zones, Tower Control, Rainmaker, and Clam Blitz. So that'll be very interesting to check out. They also revealed that the game will also get its own special app called Splatnet 3 Connected. Yes, it's the same shit as previously, where Nintendo did that with Splatoon 2. They also revealed new amiibos, as well as announcing more post-launch updates. So overall, I think Splatoon 3 is gearing up to be a far better sequel than its predecessors, and definitely I'm looking forward to it. So anyway, with that being said, let's move on to our next story. Okay, and this next one I thought was very interesting. So with the shipping and production issues hitting every electronics manufacturer in the world, it would stand to reason that, of course, all of them would start raising the prices of their products. Well, it seems Nintendo might not actually be doing that. Recently, the president of Nintendo, Shuntaro Furukawa, was interviewed by Nikkei, and they actually asked him a pretty interesting question about possible price increases because of course, production and shipping issues. And he said something very interesting, and I quote, "We're not considering that at this point for 2 reasons. In order to offer unique entertainment to a wide range of customers, we want to avoid pricing people out. Our competition is a variety of entertainment in the world, and we always think about pricing in terms of the value of the fun we offer. Our products also include software. Nintendo has sold more than 100 million Switch units so far, and it's important to maintain the momentum of our overall business. Generally speaking, a weak yen makes domestic Switch sales less profitable. And I think he actually makes a very interesting point here. You see, Nintendo is kind of in a unique position in that, unlike Microsoft and Sony, they didn't actually release a brand new system sometime after COVID. You know, they've kind of been releasing the same system since 2017. And while, yes, Nintendo hardware honestly does need an upgrade, it is starting to show its age. The fact that it's much cheaper to produce than, say, the Xbox One, Series X or the PlayStation 5 makes it a lot easier to get out there than those systems. In fact, I think that's also the same reason why Sony decided to ramp up production on the PlayStation 4, because really no one can get their hands on the PS5, so you already have a system that can be easily put together for a much cheaper price. Just continue making those. And so I think Nintendo is in that same position, and they're taking advantage of it. I mean, you also have the fact that because they've already hit 100 million units, that means all they can do is just really put out software. But at the same time, they shouldn't entirely rely on that. Eventually, these shipping and production issues will inevitably end, and they're going to have to upgrade the hardware of the Switch. So I think that's what they're actually doing. I've said it before, that I think that's what the Switch OLED was supposed to be. It was supposed to be a replacement for the Switch, but then COVID hit, shipping and production issues have been happening, and so Nintendo basically looked at what Microsoft and Sony are dealing with and basically said, okay, we're not going to deal with this. And ultimately, I think that will actually help them out in the long run. Though they shouldn't just sit on that success of the Switch. Once all of these issues are figured out, immediately release a new system, and I guarantee you that momentum will still keep going. Anyway, let's move on to our next story. Alright, and for our last story, we gotta talk about the Sega Mega Drive Mini 2, because the fourth set of games have been announced for the Japanese release. Now, of course, that doesn't mean all of these games are going to be coming over to America, but some of them might. First and foremost, on the Genesis, you've got Game Ground, Phantasy Star 2, Populous, Sorcerian, King Colossus, and Viewpoint. And then on the Sega CD side of things, you have Echo the Dolphin CD, Robo Aleste, Romance of the Three Kingdoms 3, Shin Megami Tensei, and Tenka Fubu Iotachi no Hoko. And I hope I pronounced that last one correctly. So far, some interesting stuff there. Definitely Phantasy Star 2 and Game Ground are good ones. Populous is alright. I'm not sure if the other three are going to make it over to the Western release. I definitely guarantee you that Echo the Dolphin CD will make it. I'm hoping Robo Aleste is also added as well. I guarantee you Romance of the Three Kingdoms and that last one are not going to be there. But I am hoping that Shin Megami Tensei does actually get added to this thing, because then it would be the first official release, Western release, of Shin Megami Tensei to North America, outside Japan at least. Because surprisingly, it's never been released. You'd think with how popular the franchise is, they would actually try to bring it over here to North America, but apparently no. They never did, so I'm kind of hoping that they will. But anyway, so that brings the total count of Japanese games so far at 44. That means that there's one more wave for them to announce. Of course, the American release is at anywhere between 23, so still got a ways to go until the other half of the American games are announced. But so far, it's looking like it's going to be a really nice collection of games. Anyway, guys, I'm going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after this.
16-bit 6メガセガファンタシースター2目を見張りリアルキャラクターツインスクロールメガドライブ対応未体験ロールプレイングゲームファンタシースター2
All right, folks, we're back, and that's it for this week. I want to thank you all for listening. Remember, if you liked any of the music I played throughout this episode, links are in the description. Same thing goes with stories. So anyway, with that being said, I'll see you next week, and remember to keep gaming.